Welcome back to another edition of Breaking Bread. I am your host, Kunta Min of the Kingmaker Street Team, where we host events, build community, provide spaces for our people, and talk about some of the amazing work that they're doing within the community. Today I have a special guest. His name is Bryon Malik. He is a small business and personal branding photographer who has been photographing people for over a decade within Oakland. Thank you, Malik, for just coming here and just shedding your light. Our first question is just tell us a little bit about yourself and just your upbringing within Oakland. And is there anything that happened within your childhood that sparked any creative aspirations early on?
Oh, wow. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me, Kunta. I really appreciate it. Always love giving back and speaking with the youth and with the folks. So just, I'm born and raised in Oakland. Oakland, California is my home, so, growing up here has been amazing. I go to other places and, I love it, I like it, but it's something about coming back to Oakland for me. My parents migrated from the South, Texas and Arkansas, and moved back out here. And so we've been here, I've been here my entire life, so, but well-traveled, must say that. So what really sparked me, just getting into photography was, I loved fashion, I used to see people dressing up and GQ wearing the suits and the ties and just, colorful combinations and things like that. And so I thought that was interesting how people put things together, and then I started to do that for myself and wearing the different brands and all that stuff. But fashion really got me to notice photography, and so I would frequent and look at the magazines all the time and see, different ads in Vogue and, Ebony, Essence magazine. I loved all that stuff, and Jet magazine as well. And so I would see the fashion and see how people were putting things together, and then I thought to myself, wow, I would love to photograph this stuff. Like, what is that? I didn't know anything about photography, and I just started to, do my research and just kind of a slow roll and falling in love with it.
Well, I appreciate that input, because that's kind of how I got into photography myself as well. It's just kind of I was really into fashion, really into just different ideas in my head I wanted to kind of put. Also, I'm a visual learner, so
yeah.
With that being said, I see a lot of things way better when I see it, and when I compose it myself, I understand it a lot better. So, what you saying about the fashion piece really resonated with me. We're moving on. Another question. What made you transition from being a dancer or musician to become a full-time photographer? And also, are there any skills from your dance career, musical career, that crossed over into the photography aspect, and kind of help you move along with your career?
Wow, what made me get into it? Why I decided to be a photographer was because I was a musician for a long time. For 15 plus years. I was MC. I was doing some rap and things like that. So I've always been around music, just entertainment in general, so whether it's fashion or music. But what really got me into it was as I pursued a record deal, I realized that there was a lot of what I call red tape. There was a lot of red tape and a lot of politics in pursuing a record deal. You could get a record deal and they will sit you on the label until they develop you. And so I realized very quickly that I didn't have any control. And photography, to me, was something that I decided that I can have the control to control my destiny in my life.
Yep.
And so I could pick up a camera. There's no age limit to that, Rest in peace to my mentor, is Gordon Parks. He was in his 90s, mid-90s, before he passed, and, he was a photographer, director, fashion designer. He was a whole bunch of things. But he was really somebody that inspired me as I looked at Gordon Parks. And just having the control to be able to control my own destiny. I could pick up my camera and go photograph birds in the jungle of Costa Rica, or I could shoot people, or I could shoot product. There was no limit to the field of photography. And so that gave me a lot of motivation to go into that field. And what crossed over was from my dancing and everything is anticipation. As a dancer, you got moves, you gotta anticipate. So it's like you're doing a little move like 1, 2, 3, click. So I began to develop that. Dancing became part of my photography. And so the anticipation is what really, really happened between rap as well, because even in rhyming, you got a call to the crowd, there's call and response, that's all anticipation as well. So dance, music, all of that crosses right into photography.
Definitely, I appreciate that input. It was really interesting when you were talking about the anticipation and just your dancing aspect, because I could do a little two-step myself, and
Right.
I never really thought that dance can kind of like incorporate within photography. And I shoot film, so everything has to be very, very
Shoot
intentional.
film as well.
Yes, of course. Everything has to be very, very intentional when you shoot film, and also you have to kind of like anticipate what the person is going to do, and kind of like figure out that authentic side of themselves. Which brings me into my next question is, actually, you specialize in creative portraiture, and I think you do a phenomenal job of just capturing the individual and trying to capture when you capture the individual, you capture their authentic self. So kind of just what story are you trying to convey through your lens when you're doing these type of shoots?
Man, I'm not really trying to tell my story per se. I'm trying to tell my subject's story.
Gotcha.
I try to make the connection, and I'm only there to be used. You know what I mean, as a tool. You know what I mean. I'm used as a tool because I only want to enhance my client's vision. So when I'm speaking with them and I'm talking with them in the early stages of the conversation before we ever get to the shoot, I'm already taking notes as to who they are, what they're trying to do, and where they want to go, and it's just my job to elevate their idea. So, I mean that's how easy it is. I'm telling their story.
Definitely. And that takes a lot of just knowing the person and knowing what they want. Very, very observative. As photographers, we have to be very, very observative. And also just been talking with other people who you shot, and also because you shot me personally, so I know that you create a space and you're very, very intentional with the space that you're creating. And the things that people were telling me that you do pretty much every time you shoot is that you create the space and you give them music. And I kind of wanted to know, how did you incorporate music within the space that you're shooting in, and kind of like making your subject feel comfortable being in front of the camera, taking the shot, and then you give them the final product and they're pleased with it. So it's just what I love, Kunta. Music is, I love it. It's never going to be it's always going to be a part of me. So so right when I'm speaking with a client and we get to the studio or on location where we're shooting, the first thing I ask them is, do you have a music preference? Yes,
and
I remember that.
I asked them what would they like to listen to, because I want them to feel comfortable. And people use other things, other methods. Some people might might have a sip of champagne or something, to get into the mood. But for me, it's always music. You just put on a little music, people catch the vibe, they'll start to forget about that nervousness a little bit, and then it becomes a conversation. Just like when we came here today, earlier we were talking about different things and that happened in Oakland, and then talked about music, old school music, 90s music, right? So, yeah, it's just something that's a part of me, and I know that everyone pretty much loves music, like ice cream. I hope everybody loves ice cream, but music is universal.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's something that I kind of took away from that shoot, and then when I started having my own shoots, just playing music and trying to like set the vibe, set the tone of the shoot. I feel like that's very, very important. Just connecting with the person that you're doing this for. So, like I like how you said that we're a tool, and that's something that is very, very important. I feel like everybody needs to know that we're a tool and we're used.
Yeah, and people, look at, some people look at that as being a negative, connotation, but I look at it like, I want to be the vessel that can help, get you to that next level.
Definitely.
So when I'm asking you about your product or what you're selling or what you're trying to do, I'm going to incorporate all those things, and you might say, oh, I have this, red shirt, and I was thinking of putting on this hat, and I'll be like, that's great, but we should lose the hat, and this is why. I want to see your face, or this, you have to give people an explanation as to what you're thinking and what, the concept that you're trying to bring out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Moving on to our next question, as a black man and as an entrepreneur, kind of just tell us a little bit about your experience of being an entrepreneur within this space. You've been doing it for so many years and been successful at it. I know in your field, time is definitely money, and something that I had to learn as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, just please,
well,
let us know.
As a black man, as an entrepreneur, my mentors always told me, Malik, you have to go the extra mile. You have to do 3 times more than, say, our white counterparts, right? Because, just because of what's going on in our society today and what's been going on in society. So I took that, and that's why time is everything to me. And as long as, if I'm keeping time, then things will get done. Because as an independent entrepreneur and as a black man, on top of that, it really matters. It really matters to me that, we stay on schedule. Because if you don't, then, it could be looked at negatively. I'm not going to show up to an interview late. I'm going to be an hour early. I'm going to read the paper. I'm going to find out what's going on today's news. So if the situation presents itself, I'll be able to have a conversation.
Definitely.
Oh, did you hear about the fire today? Yeah, I saw that. I saw some smoke in the air. I want to be able to have that conversation. Those are just things that my dad taught me. But yeah, just being black and being an entrepreneur in this space, there's not a lot of brothers out there, to be quite honest. You see more and more creatives and more photographers, men and women that are black, but you see more of that today. But when I started, there wasn't a whole lot. It was like 2 people that I could name. It was Victor Hall and Keba Conti of Red Bay Coffee. People don't even know that Keba Conti he's a famous photographer. People don't even know that D Nice, Club Quarantine. He's a photographer. He's amazing. He has an amazing body of work. So just knowing the 2 or 3 photographers that I came up with, I was like, oh, okay. Like I said, Victor Hall, who did a lot of work with Too Short and E40 and all those folks. And, Keba Conti, who also worked with Too Short and Digital Underground. And now he's a coffee giant, So, it's just, I just put that into my work, and it's my personality. And, sometimes people think that's, it rubs them the wrong way, but eventually you'll get it.
No, yeah,
you'll get it, because when somebody says, hey, show up at this time, and you show up, you get paid. If you don't show up at that time, you don't get paid.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You're trying to get that moolah.
Got to get paid, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Everything you said about just being black within this space and being an entrepreneur within this space, you have to work it 10 times harder as your counterparts. And I feel like that's just the beauty of being black sometimes.
Yeah.
We've always had to work 10 times harder than anybody just to get our foot in the door. You just look through history. And that was how you said that kind of like helped me in my own endeavors, and just kind of keep pushing forward and keep moving. Also want to shout out my photography group, Cinematic Shooters Only, within Atlanta, Georgia. We're doing the big things when we get back. Our next question, kind of just how how have you kind of shaped your whole photography journey? Like, going from dancing, going from being an MC, going from, traveling the world. How does that all kind of tie into the work that you do personally?
I base everything that I do now, and for some years now, on family. Everything that I do is for my family.
Definitely.
For my wife and my son, my three sons, and my granddaughter. I have a granddaughter now.
Congrats.
And so it's all family oriented, family driven. I make decisions based on my family, and I used to make, as a youngster, I used to make ego based decisions, but now it's just family based decisions. And so that's how it's really shaped me, the travel and also relationships. Building good relationships with people, whether you work with them or not. My mentor, his name is Leland Thompson. He actually mentioned to me once, and I was frustrated once about working with some people, and he says, I was like, man, I don't want to work with these folks. And he says, it's not who you work with, it's how you work with them. And he gave an analogy about, the mobsters, and how, the mobsters, they had people that they worked with, but, it probably didn't end well. It probably didn't end well for some of them,
Yeah.
but that means that something shady was going on.
Definitely.
But if you hold your ground and you stick to your, who you are, then you can work with that individual as long as you don't compromise who you are. And that's how I work. I work with people that, not necessarily would think I probably wouldn't work with, but I find that common ground, the middle C. When you go to piano, it's like ding, 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 ding. You find the middle C, you're good. That's how I do photography and so family, and relationships building is how I work and what's really shaped me in my photography.
Definitely. It's interesting to see kind of the different generations between us both, and how your whole thing right now is kind of family orientated. And mine's kind of right now is just kind of building relationships and getting my foot in the door.
Yeah.
And kind of just, learning and experience within this field, because this is a beautiful field. And I believe that, for little black boys and little black girls, that, we should be, creating our own story.
Yes.
As photographers, we are historians, and I feel like it is our duty to tell our own vision within this space. Because as the narrative that we're perceived within the media is most of the time negative, or you're either playing basketball or you're rapping or doing whatever. I feel like there's other aspects and other lanes to kind of venture out into these different fields, and that you can do that just by off your phone, basically.
Yeah.
In these times, which I think is really amazing. I think that more kids should be able to get into that field like that. So yes, that concludes our interview for today. Thank you again, Malik. I appreciate everything you've done and everything all the wisdom you have poured onto me. I really appreciate that. So And we can close. We have cool merchandise, original music, documentary films, music videos, curriculum, and a plethora of other content that promote our movement and change the narrative of Black boys. Please follow us on all of our social media accounts at Kingmakers of Oakland on IG and Facebook, and Kingmakers with a capital O on our Twitter. Thank you again. Peace.
I'm a king. For this hate